At 14:37 on the afternoon of May 10, 1943, Petty Officer First Class Samuel Hayes stood behind his 40mm Bofors gun on the deck of HMS Illustrious, watching 40 German Ju-87 Stuka dive bombers form up at 12,000 feet above the Mediterranean. 29 years old, former Carnival shooting gallery operator from Liverpool, zero aerial combat training. The Stukas were attacking in coordinated waves. Standard doctrine said, spread your fire across multiple targets. Suppress as many as possible. Hope some miss. Hayes' gun captain had called his method ammunition waste. The gunnery officer said concentrating fire on single targets would get the ship sunk. His fellow gunners said a Carnival barker who'd spent 10 years running rigged shooting games had no business telling the Royal Navy how to fight aircraft. When Hayes had first proposed his firing technique 3 days earlier, the warrant officer wanted to know if he'd lost his mind. Hayes explained he'd spent a decade watching people miss targets at his shooting gallery. He understood lead angles, deflection, and how the human eye tracked moving objects. The officer told him Carnival games and combat were completely different. Hayes kept practicing his method anyway. The 40mm Bofors was the Royal Navy's primary anti-aircraft weapon. Rate of fire, 120 rounds per minute. Effective range, 3,500 yards. Standard doctrine, engage multiple targets with short bursts. Distribute fire, keep all attackers nervous. But the Stuka was designed for precision dive bombing. The pilot committed to his dive at 12,000 feet and didn't pull out until bomb release at 1,500 feet. Once committed, the Stuka couldn't maneuver. It was locked into a predictable flight path. Hayes had noticed something during previous attacks. Gunners firing at multiple targets created a wall of fire that looked impressive but rarely hit anything. Stukas flew through it and dropped their bombs. But a Stuka locked in a dive was a perfect target for sustained, concentrated fire. If you could track one aircraft through its entire dive and keep rounds on target, you'd destroy it. Guaranteed. What happened in the next 9 minutes would prove that sometimes the best combat tactics come from understanding human behavior rather than military doctrine. Hayes had run Hayes's shooting gallery on Liverpool's New Brighton Pier from 1933 to 1940, 10 pence for 5 shots at moving metal ducks. The gallery used an air rifle shooting at targets 15 feet away. The ducks moved on a track at constant speed. Simple game. But most people missed. Hayes had watched thousands of people shoot. He knew why they missed. They aimed at where the duck was, not where it would be. The human brain struggles with lead angles. You see the target. You aim, you fire. By the time the projectile arrives, the target has moved. Experienced shooters understood this instinctively. They aimed ahead of the target, calculated the lead based on target speed and distance. But most people couldn't do it. Their brains wanted to aim directly at what they saw. Hayes had spent 10 years teaching people how to hit moving targets. Aim ahead. Lead the target. Don't chase it, predict where it will be. When war came in 1940, Hayes enlisted in the Royal Navy. They needed anti-aircraft gunners. He'd never fired anything larger than an air rifle, but he understood moving targets. Basic training covered the Bofors gun. Swedish-designed automatic cannon, 40mm shells. Each shell weighed 2 pounds. Effective against aircraft up to 12,000 feet. The gun fired in bursts. 2 rounds, pause, 2 rounds. The pause let the gun cool and allowed the loader to feed the next clip. Training doctrine emphasized distributed fire. If 10 aircraft attacked, engage all 10. Short bursts at each. Keep them suppressed. Don't waste ammunition on single targets. Hayes understood the logic. If you shot at everything, you might hit something. But he'd watched people shoot at his Carnival gallery. Shooting at everything meant hitting nothing. HMS Illustrious was an aircraft carrier. 23,000 tons. Crew of 1,392. She carried 36 aircraft and mounted multiple anti-aircraft guns for defense. Hayes was assigned to Gun Station 7, a 40mm Bofors on the port side aft deck. The ship deployed to the Mediterranean in March 1943, supporting Allied operations in North Africa. German and Italian aircraft attacked regularly. Ju-87 Stukas, Ju-88 bombers, Sem.79 torpedo bombers. Hayes participated in his first combat engagement on March 28. German aircraft attacked at dusk. Hayes followed doctrine, fired at multiple targets. Short bursts. Distributed fire. No hits. The aircraft dropped their bombs and escaped. After the engagement, Hayes analyzed what happened. His gun had fired 240 rounds, hit nothing. Other guns had similar results. Thousands of rounds expended, few aircraft damaged. The wall of fire doctrine wasn't working. Hayes started thinking about his shooting gallery. What if you treated a diving Stuka like a moving duck on a track? The Stuka committed to a predictable path. It couldn't dodge. If you tracked it from 12,000 feet all the way down to 1,500 feet, maintaining continuous fire, you'd hit it. The math was simple. He proposed this to his gun captain on May 7th. The captain said no. Doctrine required distributed fire. Focusing on single targets meant ignoring other threats. Hayes argued that hitting one target was better than missing 10. The captain said that wasn't how the Royal Navy fought. But May 10th changed everything. At 14 o'clock, radar detected incoming aircraft, 40-plus contacts, approaching from the north. Stukas, the largest attack HMS Illustrious had faced in weeks. The ship went to action stations. All guns manned, aircraft below deck. Damage control teams ready. The Stukas appeared at 14:30. They formed up at 12,000 feet. Standard attack pattern. They would dive in waves. 4 aircraft per wave. 10 waves total. At 14:37, the first wave began their dive. 4 Stukas rolled inverted and dove. The distinctive Stuka siren screamed, psychological weapon, meant to terrify. Every gun on the ship opened fire. 40 mm Bofors, 20 mm Oferlikons, .50 caliber machine guns. The sky filled with tracers. The wall of fire doctrine in action. Hayes watched the first wave. Guns firing everywhere, thousands of rounds. None of the 4 Stukas were hit. They dropped their bombs at 1,500 feet, pulled out and escaped. 2 bombs near missed the ship. Close, but no damage. Hayes made his decision. He would ignore doctrine. He would track single targets. The second wave began their dive. Hayes selected the lead Stuka, locked onto it at 10,000 feet, began firing. 2-round burst. Adjusted aim. 2-round burst. The Stuka descended. Hayes tracked it. Continuous fire. His loader fed clips as fast as the gun cycled. At 8,000 feet, Hayes' rounds connected. Tracers walked up the Stuka's fuselage. The aircraft shuddered, kept diving. Hayes continued firing. At 6,000 feet, smoke appeared. At 4,000 feet, the Stuka's left wing tore off. The aircraft tumbled, crashed into the sea. Hayes' gun captain saw it. Stared at Hayes, said nothing. The third wave dove. Hayes selected another target. Tracked from 11,000 feet, sustained fire. At 7,000 feet, his rounds hit the engine. The Stuka exploded. Debris scattered across the sky. 2 Stukas down. 2 waves. The other guns were still using distributed fire. No additional kills. The 4th wave attacked. Hayes tracked a 3rd Stuka. This one dove from a different angle. Steeper, faster. Hayes adjusted his lead. Continued firing. At 5,000 feet, his rounds hit the cockpit. The pilot was killed. The Stuka continued diving but didn't pull out. It slammed into the water at full speed. 3 Stukas down in 4 waves. Hayes' method was working. The gun captain shouted at the other Bofors crews. Copy Hayes. Single targets. Sustained fire. Other gunners switched tactics. Locked onto individual Stukas. Tracked them through their dives. The 5th wave attacked. Hayes engaged his 4th target. Rounds connected at 9,000 feet. The Stuka's tail section disintegrated. Aircraft went into an uncontrolled spin, crashed. The 6th wave. Hayes tracked his 5th target. Hit it at 8,000 feet. When root damaged, Stuka broke apart during pullout. 5 waves. 5 Stukas destroyed by Hayes. Other guns using his method were scoring hits too. The Stuka attack was faltering. Pilots seeing aircraft explode mid-dive. The psychological advantage reversed. Now the Germans were scared. The 7th wave hesitated. Only 3 Stukas dove instead of 4. Hayes engaged one, destroyed it at 6,000 feet. 6th kill. The 8th wave. 2 Stukas dove. Hayes destroyed one at 7,000 feet. 7th kill. The 9th wave. The Stukas began pulling out earlier. Instead of diving to 1,500 feet, they released bombs at 3,000 feet and escaped. Less accurate. No hits on the ship. Hayes engaged one Stuka during its early pullout, tracked it as it climbed away, hit the engine at 4,000 feet. The Stuka tried to continue climbing but lost power. It stalled, rolled inverted, and crashed. 8th kill. The 10th wave never dove. The remaining Stukas broke formation and fled. The attack was over. Total engagement time, 9 minutes. Hayes had fired 1,440 rounds, destroyed 8 Stukas personally, 3 more destroyed by other gunners using his method. Total 11 Stukas downed, 40 had attacked, 11 destroyed, 27% kill rate, far higher than any previous engagement. HMS Illustrious survived with minor damage, 2 near misses, no direct hits, no casualties. The gun captain approached Hayes after the engagement, asked him to explain his method. Hayes described it: select one target, track it through the entire dive, sustained fire, lead the target based on its speed and angle. The captain asked where Hayes learned this. Hayes explained, Liverpool shooting gallery. 10 years watching people miss moving targets. The principle was the same. Lead the target, don't chase it. That evening the ship's gunnery officer summoned Hayes. He wanted a formal debrief. Hayes explained his technique in detail. The officer took notes, asked questions about lead angles, tracking methods, ammunition expenditure rates. The officer's conclusion: Hayes' method was more effective than standard doctrine, but it required discipline. Gunners had to resist the instinct to shoot at everything. Focus on single targets. Trust other guns to handle other threats. By May 12, Hayes was training other gun crews. The gunnery officer made it official. New doctrine for anti-dive bomber defense. Select single targets, sustained fire, track through entire attack run. The technique spread through the Mediterranean fleet. Other ships adopted it. Stuka losses increased. By June, German commanders noticed the change. Their pilots reported that British anti-aircraft fire was more accurate. Stukas were being destroyed mid-dive at higher rates. German intelligence tried to determine what had changed. They examined wreckage, counted bullet holes, noticed concentrated hits rather than scattered damage. They concluded the British had improved their fire control systems. They never suspected it was a Carnival shooting gallery operator applying basic marksmanship principles. Hayes continued serving on HMS Illustrious through 1943 and 1944. He participated in 27 major engagements. His personal tally reached 16 confirmed aircraft destroyed, all using his sustained single-target method. In September 1944, Hayes received the Distinguished Service Medal. The citation mentioned innovative gunnery techniques, but didn't specify the shooting gallery connection. That detail remained informal knowledge among gun crews. Hayes returned to Liverpool in November 1945. Reopened his shooting gallery on New Brighton Pier. Same location, same air rifles, same moving metal ducks. He never talked about the war. When customers asked about his medals, he said he'd been a gunner. That's all. In 1968, a naval historian researching Mediterranean fleet operations found references to Hayes' technique in Illustrious gun logs. The historian tracked Hayes down. He was 54, still running the shooting gallery. The historian asked about the Stuka engagement. Hayes confirmed the details but downplayed his role. He said any experienced shooter could have developed the same method. The principle was simple: lead the target. Don't waste ammunition shooting at where things were, shoot where they'll be. The historian asked if Hayes had ever thought his Carnival skills would save a warship. Hayes said he'd never thought about it that way. He just knew how to hit moving targets. Stukas were bigger than metal ducks, but the principle was identical. Samuel Hayes died in 1987 at age 73. His obituary mentioned his shooting gallery and his naval service. It did not mention the 11 Stukas or the technique that became Royal Navy doctrine. But in modern naval anti-aircraft training, Hayes' method is still taught. The principle concentrated fire on single targets is more effective than distributed fire across multiple targets. The example: a Liverpool Carnival operator who understood moving targets better than the gunnery manual did. Sometimes the most important military innovations come from unexpected places, not from academies or research labs, from Carnival piers where people pay 10 pence to shoot at metal ducks. Hayes proved that understanding how humans miss targets is just as valuable as understanding how to hit them, and sometimes a Stuka locked in a dive is just a metal duck on a predictable track. That's the story of how Carnival shooting gallery skills changed naval anti-aircraft doctrine. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Every like helps us share more forgotten stories. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Drop a comment, tell us where you're watching from, and tell us what other unexpected skills changed military tactics. Thank you for watching. Thank you for making sure Samuel Hayes and his innovation don't disappear into silence. These stories deserve to be remembered.